There are a lot of threats to vernal pools in Ohio. One among them is runoff. Runoff from farms, runoff from urban areas. From farms, you can have fertilizers running into vernal pools that will eutrophy them, cause them to become too fertile and cause algae blooms to happen, and that's not good for the community that lives in the pool. You can also have pesticides and herbicides, which are an extreme danger to the water chemistry of the pool. Amphibians are very, very sensitive to the chemistry in the water, since they breathe through their skin and they lay eggs that the water can get to. And also, in the case of salamanders, the sperm is laid externally and then taken in the female's body. So things that are in the water can kill the sperm or kill the eggs, even if the adults survive. Urban runoff is another problem. People washing their cars, using lawn chemicals, and things of that sort. Automotive runoff. And in our age of mitigation, we often do end up with vernal pools that have been preserved very near urban areas. So runoff, a very serious threat to many vernal pools in Ohio. This one, I think, chiefly because of the creek, is safe. Perhaps the biggest threat, no, I'd say it is the biggest threat to vernal pools in our area, is filling. A lot of vernal pools get filled in for development, for commercial and residential development, for road building and so on. There is a permitting process for filling of vernal pools, but it doesn't always protect vernal pools the way it should. So even with the permitting process, a lot of vernal pools do get filled in. But in my estimation, from my experience talking with state officials and landowners, probably 50% or more of the filling of vernal pools is done outside the permitting process, that is, illegally. Sometimes developers aren't aware that there's a vernal pool where they're having their project. Sometimes they just don't care. So neighbors who keep an eye on the vernal pools in their areas can contact a local watershed group or environmental group or state protection agency, and this could be of great assistance to state agencies who are woefully underfunded as far as monitoring environmental concerns themselves. So the filling of a vernal pool is, even though, say, a population of frogs that breeds in the vernal pool doesn't live in it, they have high fidelity to the pools where they were born. And I remember as a teacher once one of my students asked me, "My grandma has this trailer in the woods, and every spring all these frogs climb all over the walls and all over the windows and the doors and keep her up at night with their calling. And we don't know why they do that." And I asked, well, was there water where the trailer is before the trailer was there? And the student said, yes, there had been some water there, and it had been filled in, and the trailer was where the water had been. So this was a population of amphibians that was probably going to disappear because even though they were fine, they could no longer reproduce. Filling is a terrible, terrible fate for the animals that live in vernal pools. There was a mention that many vernal pools are in urban areas because of mitigation. And even though the vernal pool may survive, the populations of amphibians that breed in that pool very possibly may not. Some amphibians, like salamanders, can migrate several hundred yards to get to a vernal pool to breed. Wood frogs can migrate as far as 1,000 yards. So if the vernal pool is saved, but the woodlands, or what we often call buffer areas, around the vernal pools are destroyed, we can lose populations of animals that use those vernal pools. So the community structure is displaced, and some bad things can happen. For instance, salamander larvae, these things like spotted and Jefferson and smallmouth salamander that breed in vernal pools, their larvae are voracious feeders on mosquito larvae. And one of them can eat hundreds of mosquito larvae. And if the buffer area is destroyed and the population of amphibians around the vernal pool disappears, the mosquitoes won't. So the setting around that vernal pool may now become much more affected by mosquito populations than if the amphibians had still been there. So buffer areas are extremely important to vernal pools. They provide shade for the vernal pool, keep the water temperature down, and provide living habitat for many animals that don't live in vernal pools but use them at one point or another.